Well, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Cemetery Board. I see some old new faces here. That's great. I'm Dan Shapiro. I'm Secretary of State Cesar Perales, Deputy Chair.
Bob Welch, representing Commissioner Reeve Shah from Columbia.
Chris Miles representing the Attorney General, Eric Schneider.
Louis Pollock, Director of the Division
I
of
was gonna
Cemeteries. Let the record reflect that this is the first cemetery board meeting at which I am not wearing a purple shirt.
Well, that's a matter of some debate.
I'm wearing a purple tie.
Chet Butwitz, Assistant Director of the Division of Cemeteries.
Mike Seelman, Senior Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Glenn Breen, Investigator, Division of Cemeteries.
Suzanne Dressel, Clerk, Division of Cemeteries.
Joe Ambrose, Associate Accountant, Division of Cemeteries.
Tony Malino, Counsel to the Cemetery Board.
Great. I'm advised that we should, for the record, set our next meeting so everybody's privy to it. And I think we discussed last meeting, March 25th?
That's correct.
It's Tuesday. Yeah, it's Tuesday.
Okay. At what time? 10? 10:30?
10:30.
10:30. Okay, so everybody knows, that's great. So, minute of previous meeting, minutes, everybody have an opportunity to take a look. Any changes, amendments, corrections?
I have none.
Wow, this yours, Susie? You
I never even saw them this time, I have to say.
Well,
We're on vacation, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
is that
That's
Miss
good
Business
reason.
or what? I don't know. No, well, we'll take advantage of Louis having not seen these, so we
Yes.
have no corrections.
I'm sure they're
amendments. All right, have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great. Mr. Malillo, legislation and regulation, what's happening?
Well, I have to report that I've been remiss. I was out of the office Tuesday and
No, your report is,
did not update my legislative report.
can you give us, is there anything happening that you can tell us orally?
I am not aware of anything significant happening in the legislature.
But you are aware of our regulatory initiatives and what's going on there?
We are still drafting proposed response to the comments we received on the pet cemetery regs. That hopefully will go through soon. And on the financial reporting regs, we had a meeting with representatives of NISAC and Pine Lawn. We seem to be agreement on 99% of the draft changes to the regs. The one issue where we're still trying to come to agreement is with regard to reporting of pre-need sales and escrowing and depositing funds as installments are paid on pre-need sales.
Okay.
But I think we're waiting for some documentation from NISAC and Pine Lawn. Once we see how they handle those funds, we'll be able to make some revisions and then bring it to the meeting.
All right, so you're working together and hopefully we'll have agreed upon draft by the next meeting. That'd be great. Okay.
I also wanted to let the board know that Tuesday I was at a meeting of the Association of Towns, and I presented a continuing legal education course on cemeteries to the town folks there. And it was very well received. It was a good crowd that showed up. They had a lot of questions, and I even came up afterwards and asked more questions. And thank you for the presentation. So this is my first time doing it. Hopefully it'll happen again.
So who's your audience?
The Association of Towns it's town members who belong to the association. This was in New York City. They come from all over the state. Attend this is a 2 or 3 day conference.
This is their annual conference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very, very well attended. Down there, so. Good job. More importantly, you get 2 times the credits from New York.
3 times.
3 times.
I've been missing the boat all these years.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Oh, and I should add that Dave Fleming participated as well. He was one of the co-presenters. It really went well. We had so much to talk about, we ran out of time. But a lot of that was because of the questions that we received because it was a lively audience.
Did you direct them to our website to watch the broadcast of our cemetery board meeting? I wanted to expand our audience. Okay.
Steve Lewis did have a purple shirt on.
Yeah, right.
That's great. Thanks. Anything else? We got divisions report.
Here's two quick items. We did in fact issue a letter on February, I think it actually went out February 13th, the state of February 12th, on the how crematories can send cremated human remains now that registered mail is unavailable. The one change that was a safe harbor that we discussed at the last meeting stayed the same. The one thing that has changed is that we, after speaking with council and with the Association of Cemeteries, we decided that there's too many variables to try to set a price, and it made more sense to treat the mailing fee for Priority Express as a pass-through cost, and then if the cemetery or crematory wants to charge a handling or service fee, a flat handling or service fee for mailing a thing to you, because it takes them time to prepare the labels, takes them time to go to the post office, they might very well decide to buy a scale so that they can weigh it and not have to deal with like the post office and waiting in line and all that. It's also cheaper if you do it at home. That they could adopt a handling or service fee, they can submit that to us, and we'll review them. If there are some cemeteries or crematories that have existing charges that are on a flat rate, they don't depend on the cost of mailing, and we're obviously not doing away with those. They file those, and they can still charge those. But we think this makes more sense if anyone's going to be adopting it new. The only other thing I have to report, which is a little premature, but I'm going to mention it anyway, so that this report isn't quite as short as it otherwise would be, is that we've been discussing since I started, and probably way before then, about trying to do more outreach to more of the smaller cemeteries and communities, mostly outside the New York City area, because there's a lot of unpaid volunteers who don't know what they're doing and need our help, and we want them to know we're there for as a resource. I'm going to be speaking later today, following up on the town's theme with our Division of Local Government Services to see if there's some way we can partner with them to reach more people or reach people more effectively. Just basic information about how volunteers should be running their cemeteries. That's really all we've got now for, I guess two more things. These are matters of public record, and there are two criminal investigations concerning the cemeteries, which I think everyone's aware of. The first one, there was another theft at the United Hebrew Cemetery alleged. There's been an indictment, and there's been an arrest and an indictment on I think Class B grand larceny. Grand larceny, I forget the exact charge. It's a B felony. And I learned yesterday that there was another situation of alleged theft at the cemetery in Tompkins County. An arrest was made yesterday on that one as well. And I haven't got the indictment or anything like that, but it's public at this point.
Okay.
That's
Unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that it happened. It's fortunate that the arrest happened.
Unfortunate that, yes.
And happened relatively quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Vandalism report, Chet.
Yes. For fiscal year ending March 31st, 2014, vandalism fees collected to date are $46,544. Applications granted are $489,903. Applications pending are $811,756. Of those that were granted, 5 applications totaling $58,665 were for vandalism, 20 applications for restoration totaling $379,091, and 2 applications for abandonment totaling $2,147.
All right, we've got 3 vandalism, etc. orders on the docket today.
Yeah, well, I'll just summarize Green Ridge. I think that came before the board in November. It involved some headstones and a chapel-type space at the cemetery that was smashed up. The board tabled it for 2 reasons, mostly both having to do with the chapel. One of which was, is it really appropriate for us to be paying for stained glass as opposed to plane glass here. And second, given that this is an unusual situation in which the cemetery in fact owns a portion of the vandalized property, they should go claim on their insurance first. It took them a long time to put that claim in the insurance, I think actually acted pretty quickly. They've been compensated for all of the damage to the chapel above their $500 deductible. And there is an additional, whatever 3,205 less 500 is, I guess to $2,705 in incidental costs of the notice to advertise, the cost of the legal notice, and headstones that were knocked over that are not covered by their insurance, that they're still seeking compensation for. Len's been out to the site, and we think it's entirely justified. One thing I should clarify is that there is supposed to be a restitution payment made by one of the perpetrators. The insurance is seeking to recover the restitution payment as opposed to us, so that's a little wrinkle there.
Well, it's a wrinkle that we can deal with after, I guess. I think who stands in the shoes of the first creditor, if you will.
Honestly, I have no idea what the law is on this one, whether they go first, we go first, whether it's first in time, first in right, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know they're out of pocket $3,255, and that there's really, I don't see any reason not to grant that, the application of that amount.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm rounding off, it's $3,204.61.
The amount that's shown here is $830.80.
That's the original amount.
So we need to, so what is the exact amount posting?
It's actually on the application itself, I
It's-
think,
3,200, was it the
$3,204.61, isn't it in Len's?
That's the adjusted
It is,
amount.
it did make it back.
I sent out a, addendum to the packet, I think, Tuesday.
Right. All right, so it's $3,204.
Right.
And that includes the $500 deductible that they're seeking.
Right.
That's fair. Anybody have a conversation on Green Ridge? Further information? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
The second claim we have on is by Oakwood Cemetery in Troy, is for dangerous monuments. They apparently have identified 105 left.
Yeah, I think it was a little more, let me see, 114.
Okay, 105 is the number of monuments that were
14.
vandalized in January. That's not before us.
No.
114 monuments. Again, Len has actually gone and seen all 114 monuments and confirmed that they are in fact large enough to be dangerous. We sent this one back because Oakwood's a fairly large cemetery. They were going to do the work in-house, and they priced it out based on that. Obviously, we were concerned that they hadn't gotten an outside estimate. We wanted to make sure that they're
Just for the foundation work. They were
Right.
gonna, the rest, the resetting and the resealing, they had two separate estimates for that. But in the past, they have an approved charge for foundation work, and in the past, they have provided us with estimates based on their approved charge.
I see.
But they have since, they went out and got another estimate for this application for the foundation work as well, which came in higher.
Right, we assumed that would be the case, but we wanted to make sure that they'd actually compared it against market rates. And the total sum here is $94,130?
No, that's it, 31 cents.
Yeah, it was 31 cents, 31 cents. And, again, we see that there's really no question that these are all dangerous, that these are all appropriate.
And we've had this discussion before about laying monuments down, but it costs.
These are all, they don't really fit the bill for, they're pretty large, all of them, and I don't think a single one would qualify for that sort of, they wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And something we can think about going forward is getting a quote, making them, when they get their estimates, estimated both ways as to whether ones that can physically be laid down without blocking traffic, whether that would actually save money or not.
Yeah, and we've been down the road, I know Len has.
But if we actually get a hard quote
It
on
would be
that, that
nice.
might be a
It would
way
be
to
nice.
address that. But we're prepared to recommend approval of this one as well.
Any comments? discussion?
The one thing I'll add is, yeah, it's a lot of money, but Oakwood has really made a lot of efforts to make itself a resource for the community. And they welcome joggers, they welcome cross-country skiers, they welcome dog walkers, and the result is there's actually starting to be a fair amount of traffic through there, which makes it more important that these things get fixed.
Not only that, they do a lot on their own. They're really committed. They're in the process of uprighting every single down monument. Ones that the old vandalism that wouldn't qualify for coverage under application for our office. So they're really committed to restoring the entire cemetery. They're doing section by section, and they're pretty far along in the process.
Did you say there's 105 new ones?
Yeah,
outside
that
of
has
this
nothing to
140?
do with this.
no.
Right before our last board meeting, Oakwood Cemetery discovered 105 stones that have been vandalized. There was a report on the news the morning of the meeting. I don't know, I know Len, you had a conversation with them about that.
They may not even apply for funds because I think they may fix them themselves. That's yet to be seen. I haven't talked to them about an application, although they're certainly, welcome to apply for funds. But as of yet, I haven't received any.
All right. Anything? All right, if not, motion. So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Did you have the Fort Plain one? Did you have the memo? They have the memo.
Yeah, we know.
Okay, so Len, you want to talk about Fort Plain?
No, this is just simple vandalism, 19 monuments that were knocked over. I guess what stands out for this one is that it's the second time within a year that they've been hit with vandalism. So I think they're tightening up their measures for, with the police department, with more patrols, or however, they may even put some cameras in temporarily at least to try to get a handle on it, because prior to this, I don't think they have been vandalized if ever, but twice in 1 year now. Fortunately, both of them have been for, I think the last one, I don't recall exactly how many, but it wasn't much more than this amount either. This is for 19, I think the previous one was for 20 or 30 monuments, so both of them have been small, and this one, I did verify that they were vandalized.
One thing we can think about for vandalism issues, it's not exactly a magic bullet, but this arose, I don't know if any of you saw, a couple of weeks ago, an arrest was made in New York for a bunch of guys who were coming into, cemeteries was one of the ones out in Suffolk County in Farmingdale, and stealing metal urns.
It was Pine Law.
It was Pine Law? Okay,
So,
they were stealing urns and selling them to an unscrupulous scrap dealer. And apparently one of the ways they caught them is that they installed deer cameras on 10-foot high poles. And apparently that was the only way they had to have these deer cameras because they're cheap. And they had to have them on 10-foot high poles because otherwise the vandals would come in and take cameras first or knock them down. But this way they couldn't reach them. So they actually caught the car, and it so happened that they were there that day and recognized the car coming in. So one thing I think we could recommend as a relatively inexpensive way of at least deterring daytime vandalism is using deer cameras and putting them up high where there's less likely to be stolen.
I
Surprisingly much vandalism occurs during the day. These guys were stealing these urns right in broad daylight and on the workers' lunch breaks.
Yeah, we should be as proactive as possible in suggesting ways to deter vandalism, obviously. And we've been in the past, and there are some areas which are repeatedly vandalized, which seems to defy logic as to how to prevent it. And people are determined you're not going to stop it. But there are techniques, I think, that the cemeteries can employ to basically check. So that's good. Okay. All right.
So we're recommending.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This would
Yeah.
be approved.
Motion. So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Just so that the minutes are clear, that the application is for $2,159.24.
Great. Very good. All right, Woodlawn Cemetery. land sale. What do we have on that?
Well, we have, this is another cemetery that has an old caretaker house in the grounds that is no longer used. In fact, it hasn't been used as a caretaker house for many, many years. They were using it as an office most recently. And it's a good shape structurally, but the interior needs a lot of work. It's starting to become dilapidated, and the cemetery just doesn't want to carry the burden of maintaining it anymore. So they have a buyer who's interested, and they want to sell it because it's just become a financial burden. It's not within, it's on the edge of the cemetery, very front of the cemetery, so there's no grave spaces directly around it. The closest is probably, I don't know, maybe 100 feet. I have some photos here that I took that you can probably see. Just from back here where the cemetery starts.
Len, are they gonna have an office anymore after they?
Well, I don't think so. No, not at the cemetery. I think they, like other cemeteries, their office is wherever their trustees meet on any given day. But even the office was not, like something that they used on a daily basis, mostly to store records, or if a prospective lot owner came in looking for the purchase of lot, and they might use it, but it wasn't a daily use kind of thing.
So, how much in terms of space does the cemetery left? How many years?
They have plenty of space. I neglected to find that information out because there's no interment space around this house. I mean, they would
Right.
never use this, so I didn't take that into consideration because it's almost like a separate area that they would never use for interment space anyway.
How active?
I could find that out if you want.
You said there were plenty left. That's-
Yeah,
How active
they
is the
have
cemetery?
several acres in the rear. I know
Okay.
just from visiting the cemetery that they have an abundance of space left.
How many interments a year?
They're, again, I don't have that info offhand,
Oh, okay.
but they're pretty active
Pretty
cemetery.
active. Is there any argument that they might be needing, an office space on the premises?
I think they used it sporadically. It wasn't a daily use kind of thing in the office itself. If you could see the interior of the house, in fact, some of these pictures, you might be able to get I have pictures from that the appraisal took, and they're not too clear, but you can see it's in a pretty poor shape, so it's
One
not.
of the, just to add to that, Len, one of the appraisers pointed out that although it's structurally sound, the interior needs to be gutted. So
Yeah.
much work in that.
And what
So this
was-
is a good building to get rid of.
Yeah, what was the sale price?
92.
For what purpose are they buying it?
Well, the residents, a local dentist and his wife, as I'm told, wanted it, they want a project, and it's a nice structure, historically, it's a nice building, sound, and they just, they're in the habit of restoring old buildings, and I think it's a good thing for them to sell it. One time they were gonna, rehab the downstairs and rent it out, but it's in such rough shape, they didn't, follow through with that.
And
So,
it's zoned residential?
yes.
I mean, as long as, now, in that edge, you don't happen to know in that area if they run their dental office out of it?
He's not gonna, they're gonna use it as a residence. He has his office is somewhere in town.
Well, either way, whether or not they have their office there, I'd say having someone physically living next to the cemetery actually benefits the cemetery. So even though it's not theirs, there'll be someone keeping an eye on the shop.
And historically, cemeteries that have, houses such as this on their property, they generally use it for the caretaker of the cemetery.
Yeah.
It's usually a bad financial operation for the cemetery. It actually drains the cemetery. Because they're generally upkeeping the building, paying for different utilities, and if they don't keep up the building, it's a situation where the interior is
And what's the fiscal in the cemetery?
Actually, I kind of failed to pull up the last one. I can do that, break or something like that.
Not sure how relevant it is, but the point is that if they're not using the building needs to be gutted. Did I get an answer as to whether it's in a residential district or not residential zone?
It is in a residential, I mean,
So that's all the house is being used for, which is good. It makes sense to have somebody living there rather than having the thing fall down, so.
there's a house right next to it. There's another house that actually sits right directly next to it, so.
Right.
You know, there are other homes around it.
Any other questions? Motion? Second. All in favor, say aye. An interesting one. Mount Pleasant reduced cremation.
So I'm just gonna introduce, I'm gonna let Mike walk you through it. We got a call from Steve Sherry at Mount Pleasant in Santa Maria. He's been approached to handle cremations of cadavers from SUNY at a reduced rate. The proposal is for him to get $300 per cremation as opposed to his filed rate of $385. What we're talking about, what's been represented to us is that these bodies will be mostly whole. We're not talking about, so cremation would be fairly similar to cremating someone who dies and was brought there. It's not like just organs or something like that. And Tony and I, and I think I don't remember who else I spoke to, Tony and I, and had questions about the numbers here, and we asked him a bunch of follow-up questions. Mike, I think you pulled it all together, so I'll let you run with this.
Well, they're looking at 70, they're expecting 70 a year. The total price, the contract is actually between SUNY and the local funeral.
The proposed contract. I think there may be some structure that's different.
Yeah.
And this funeral home uses Mount Pleasant crematory, and so they then came. So the crematory was not approached directly by SUNY, it was through the funeral home. So the funeral home's gonna have a reduced rate as well from what they would normally have for direct cremation.
Mhm.
And then they've requested that Mount Pleasant does as well. Other than that, everything would work as normally. Authorization forms will be signed by the administrator at the college or the university. Basically, the $300 is kind of a pass-through, because the $800 fee will be paid by the funeral home, who will then pay the $300 to the crematory, just as they would with any. That's about it.
I mean, to add a few things, Mount Pleasant's own estimate, again, they have both a cemetery and a crematory, so it's hard to pull this stuff all apart, but their best estimate is that their marginal cost for each additional cremation is $30. Obviously, there's a lot of fixed costs that the 380 they're charging is going to cover, both in the crematory itself and in the cemetery, but that was their estimate of what it cost them to add another body. You know, Mike did some research. We found a number of crematories have a public service rate, like indigent burial, social services rate for cremation, and one, was it Rochester? Sure.
There's a crematory in I think Madison County that's already doing contract work with SUNY Upstate, and we don't have an approved charge for them, but we do have record that apparently they were told
Presumably by Richard.
by Richard or possibly Mary Lee that
Authoritative source indeed.
that
I
it-
say that,
they-
I say that with all due respect.
that it would not be an approved charge that would be on their list, that it was a contract rate, and that they could have the contract rate, however, that it should appear on the list. We got a letter from them where they requested an increase in their regular cremation rate. I think this was in 2010. And they said, our SUNY upstate rate will remain at $250.
Yeah.
So
It was
just,
never addressed.
wait,
Yeah,
before,
I see.
Tony, just to break this down into two issues, I think there's two issues here. Issue number one, is the board, well, one more fact, the two issues. The additional fact that I think is important is that my understanding is that this particular SUNY, Stony Brook, is, currently, it's arranged with the funeral home, they're shipping the bodies to New Jersey, cremating them and bringing them back. And in all likelihood, they will be shipping the bodies to New Jersey and cremating them and bringing them back if, we don't somehow approve the crematory doing this. I think there's two issues here. One is the board conceptually okay with a reduced rate for this? And then issue B is, do we think that, even if we're okay with that conceptually, do we think that that will be okay for this particular cemetery / crematory? That's issues 1A and 1B. Issue number 2, which I think is distinct, is if the answer to those are still yes, that we're okay with that. The way this deal is structured, there may be room to restructure that so that we're not approving the crematory, the funeral home paying the crematory this amount, but rather it could be structured. I think it could be structured as a separate deal directly between the crematory and SUNY for the cremation portion of it. So I just want to lay it out that way.
Yeah, I'm less interested in the second than the first. And the very first is the differentiated rates, which I think, I'm not averse to the idea. I think we need to construct or see if we have the authority to distinguish based upon this. We had long discussions at the board with respect to differentiating rates for local affairs, for instance, in spring. And it took a lot of conceptual work for us to get to the point where we could say, well, look, you can justify the difference because of cost, all right? But now we have a situation where we understand that once you reach a certain threshold, the additional expense of cremating is far less actually than the price that's posted, which in all by itself is a different issue. I'm not quite sure where to go with that, but that is what it is. But we've made an exception over the years, since time immemorial, for charitable burials, charitable donations. And perhaps that's extendable to dealing with not-for-profits. In fact, are engaged in business or charitable purposes. Some not-for-profits are. I don't know. So I am just ruminating. What is your opinion, Mr. Malilla?
This was brought to my attention earlier this week before the board meeting, and I do have a lot of concerns about it. Just reiterate what's in the statute, section 1509B, charges for services. Directors of a cemetery corporation shall fix and make reasonable charges for any acts of services ordered by the owner, by the corporation, et cetera. In determining such charges, the directors shall consider the propriety and fair and reasonable cost and expense of rendering the services performing the function. What they charge should be based upon the cost and expense of rendering the service. And it's true that we've had exceptions for indigent burial arrangements. But I think those exceptions are consistent with policy that cemeteries and crematories provide a public service, and if we don't provide indigent burials and indigent cremations, we're not serving the full community. There are people who are not able to afford those services. I don't know that we can extend that to the university. What the university is doing is they bid this out every 3 years. In fact, this is a 3-year contract.
Which may change, but if we get to that point.
Right. So this is more like a business arrangement. You see businesses engage in this. They get the lowest bidder that they can for a good or service and buying the supplier to the price for as long as they can. That's more of a for-profit arrangement than not for-profit. The other thing is two things. First, SUNY isn't going to be deprived of cremation services. It'll find someone who will provide, whether in New York or whether outside of New York. It won't be deprived of cremation services compared to indigent person who simply can't afford the regular rate. The other thing is, what if somebody else, what if another crematory comes along and wants to compete in this process? And we allow them to underbid this one by $10 for cremation, and if not, why not? And then would that allow this one to come back and say, well, I'll come back and underbid by 10? Because that's what we're engaged. This has moved into the nature of a commercial transaction versus a public service when you engage in a bidding for a contract. So I think the analogy to indigent burial breaks down because this is more of a commercial contract. And with regard to if it is a 3-year contract, what happens when the prices go?
No, that was another issue.
If they truly are bound by this rate for the full 3 years, the only way they can make up for the cost of the increased fuel is to charge everybody else more to cover the losses on this. So we'll see the community suffer if fuel rates go up, but the crematory is locked in. So,
As the proposed contract is now, they're just looking for an approved cadaver cremation rate. And it's not specific to SUNY. It's not specific to this funeral home. They were approached by this funeral home, who was approached by SUNY or however, but let's say they had cadavers at Upstate or at another facility that had been legally classified as a cadaver or a body for these purposes. If they had this rate, that would apply to them as well.
Okay. But the cadaver cremation rate, the only difference is that the body is delivered by a not-for-profit. What is the distinction between a cadaver and a body?
Well, when they file, I should probably know a little more about this than I do.
Right.
But when they file the permit, when the person dies and they're going to be cremated, the death certificate would be filled out, and they'd have a cremation or a burial permit would be filed.
Right.
And then that would be given to the crematory. In a case like this, there'd be a hold permit or an anatomical gift permit. And
Right.
if there's a DOH form, instead of a disposition of cremation or burial, it's hold for a section or hold for
Right.
educational
So
purposes.
rights to the body, if you will, be given up by family,
They
right?
would-
To the hospital or to the not-for-profit, wherever uses it.
I think appropriate. At Stony Brook, I think it's for up to 2 years.
So I do see a social policy argument on this, and that potentially, and that is that if another not-for-profit, a cemetery, can offer assistance, if you will, by virtue of discounted rate to another not-for-profit engaged in what is a socially productive enterprise, is that something that's appropriate to do? And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I hear what you say. I think we need to think about this. But I'm not. I mean, I'm bored. I want to open it up to you.
I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
They put it out to bid, and the lowest bidder then comes to the board to approve of that rate? Or what is this?
So that's the
The
potential.
bidding appears
That's
to
the
be
way it
from
was
funeral.
Oh, was there bidding here?
Not from, I don't know if it was bid, but but it appears that the negotiation between SUNY and the funeral home for an inclusive charge, including picking up and delivering the body and cremation, the funeral home, because it isn't running a crematory, had decided instead of going to sending the body to New Jersey, said, well, when regular customers come to us, we use Mount Pleasant for our cremations. So let's speak to Mount Pleasant and see whether they're willing or able to give a discount. Just like we're giving a discount on the total price as part of our arrangement with SUNY. And then we can use you instead of shipping these bodies to New Jersey.
It's not uncommon for a not-for-profit when they have ongoing services to to get proposals. You know,
Mhm.
if they use the same law firm over and over, every few years, they'll put out a request to other law firms and see if anyone else wants to beat the price that they're getting.
But again, they're doing a proposal here where the funeral directing entity is negotiating the contract, thus the fee that's charged for the cremation is secondary to the profit motive. I mean, that's all there. That the funeral director is negotiating with SUNY. That's not a great scenario.
Well, what if, Mike was pointing out that the commission rate for cadavers would be not just with this particular university, but would be available to other universities that provide the same service, of, cadaver treatment.
I think we.
So if that crematory came to us and said, we wanted to have established a cremation fee for cadaver for the purposes of education, we would look at that and say, okay, is that cost effective? I mean, does the crematory still take into consideration protecting the cemetery or crematory operations within Fiscal Farm? Are you charging the right fee for that service? I don't know that we would be looking at, the particulars of this particular case.
Well, it'd almost always be now. The problem is, and this is what Tony's point is that we're getting sort of we're not setting the fee based upon universal precepts of what it costs to do it anymore, because we're being told that, and I have no way of knowing the truth of it, but we're being told that it only costs $30 more a body now once you've reached this level. So that really what ought to be happening, if we were to look at the statute very, very narrowly, and it does say propriety of the charge, so I don't think you have to be all that narrow, that's what we did in the past. But if you look at it very narrowly, so well, look, we ought to be reducing the rate for everybody. All right, because the reasonable cost of providing it can't be anymore. It can't be what we set 10 years ago.
That's not.
No, we're not going to do that. All
In
right.
fact, what you're doing by not doing that is the public is paying the fixed costs of running a crematory, building costs, labor costs, and SUNY is basically paying for the funeral.
Yeah, how many cremations does Mount Pleasant do?
In 2013, they did 1,174.
And this is
And this is 70 out of 1,124.
60 and 80.
Yeah, right.
right.
So it's a lot less.
Dan, you're not talking big risk.
In this case, for this particular thing, but if they establish a rate for cadavers and other people start using them, it could add up. I doubt that would happen. But, because a lot of medical schools and stuff have their own facilities.
I mean, the only reason we're engaging in this discussion, Mount Pleasant is engaged in discussion, is they were approached with this. And it does make economic sense for them to acquire additional business, if you will. But the fact is that if that were the rate, and that was really the rate that reflected the cost of doing business for each and every one, then $380 would be the fee, and starting to pay it. But we're here discussing this with this public book. Well, the funeral director is seeking a discount because they can. They think they can. Right. Or I say,
Why wouldn't the contract be with the crematory, direct?
Well, you need a funeral home involved to do delivery. And I don't know, maybe this funeral home has a relationship with SUNY. Maybe it's the one that's doing the deliveries to New Jersey right
right.
now. I wouldn't be
Probably
surprised
is.
if that's the case.
Well, I think the first hurdle is whether or not we think this kind of rate can be set at all, irrespective of whether it's reasonably related or not. Putting that part of the discussion aside, whether there's an argument to be made, this is akin to like public burial services or whatever, and being able to set a special rate. And I guess that's the first question I'd like at least some work on. So is it fair to table this?
I don't think there's gonna be any, it's all gonna be reasoning and logic, we're not gonna find case law.
Right. But I think that maybe you and Tony can put their heads together and come up with a reason for logic one way or the other, what you think?
So we've got this situation where we've got the research arm of Stony Brook University Hospital. We've got 70 cadavers a year that they need to dispose of. By them paying $300 a body instead of $385, it's a cost savings to them. Right? There is a cost savings.
Well, they're gonna go elsewhere. The implication is they'll go elsewhere.
Presumably.
You know, and they'll probably go to New Jersey, which obviously, I mean, you know that, well, actually, maybe Sue doesn't care, you know. Normal person does.
This whole part about funeral homes moving, I thought the contract was
Same here.
covered with Sony. So that adds my concern. Do we even know that the funeral home is passing the savings on to
Well, that was-
Sony, or is the funeral home pocketing the savings?
Well, that was sort of the implication of my.
That was the rest of my statement, is this is savings to the taxpayer. Stony Brook is a taxpayer-funded institution. It's gone.
So we need more work on that.
I'd be more comfortable with the deal where, I didn't know until this morning that this was a deal with the funeral home. I think you probably sent it, Mike, and I just missed that. But I think, yeah, I'd be a hell of a lot more comfortable with this if they were dealing directly with Sue. That, you know, the funeral home negotiated its price there.
Me too, for the record. I mean, yeah, I said I wish, but me too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a theoretical matter, I don't think there's any I'm not necessarily in agreement that you can't have, that the statute somehow prohibits you from having a separate rate for cadavers. At least for cadavers for not-for-profits, for the same reason that presumably don't think the statute prohibits indigent burials.
Glad you said presumably, because it's just been there
We've been
from the
improving
beginning.
it. We've been improving it, and it makes sense to improve it.
Yes, it does.
The economics of whether it would make sense in any particular case is going to differ from establishment to establishment.
But here's the difference. It's not, and I don't know where I stand on this or not. That's why I wanted to prefer to have some conversation about it and research. You accommodate indigent relations and burials because that is directly related to cemetery practice, and the propriety of doing that is clear, all right? And so what you do is you spread the cost of that over the other folks to cover the cost of indigent burial.
Right.
This is different in a sense because it's not directly related to what the cemetery does, all right? This is SUNY disposal of cadavers, and is it fair? That's to me, it's a degree or two removed from direct burial with families, all right? There are families of loved ones from direct burial to this situation, and is that fair then to spread the cost of that discount over the other folks?
I'd say I turn that the other way around. I mean, these are bodies that no one would otherwise take responsibility for. It's the indigent people often have a family, they just can't afford it. This is someone where the only person who's going to do the last rites and take care of it is society as well.
There's no interested parties, I agree.
So that's all, I would say that's an argument, that might very well cut in favor of.
I hate lawyers.
I was thinking the same thing. I agree. There's no interested parties on a cadaver, I presume.
I mean, there's certainly indigent burials where there is no family, and that's even more so.
I think these bodies end up in SUNY Research Center because the family deceased chose.
Yes.
There was no.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But
In the moment of the family disposition has occurred.
Well, in either event, I think I'd like some more thought on the matter, but I also think we ought to further investigate facts on the ground about who the contract is with, who the negotiation is with, whether we think it's unacceptable to have the negotiation purely between the funeral director and the entity which is providing the cadavers, because it does, right? Take a look at that. So why don't we just table this and we'll have more information next month. Is there any need for speed on this?
I don't think there is. No, I don't think, I think this would wait till the next.
Okay.
What are they doing now?
Chris?
They're not paying $385.
No, they're not, Mount Pleasant isn't doing this right now. They're not taking.
Oh, what's doing it?
Send the funeral home that works with is probably transporting bodies to New Jersey and cremating there, and then there, and maybe bringing the remains back, and maybe not.
The, on the proposed contract, the beginning date is March 1st.
Steve had told us there wasn't so time sensitive, but he may have just lost track of time.
I got a question, what does happen with the correct remains there?
In some cases, they're disposed of, they may have a contract with a cemetery to dispose of them.
It's part of the agreement that the families establish when they
Yes.
turn over the deceased.
And then in other cases, if they're returned,
Is it worth calling Mount Pleasant to find out what their timing is? Like, is this something that we need to act on before?
I think that if it turns out to be, because I think it'd be a little more, if it turns out to be something really is time sensitive, we can always have an emergency.
Okay,
We can always get it done.
and we're allowed to do that by video conference now, right?
Uh,
I think there's a
We always
statute,
have it, yeah.
there's a statute
Oh,
that
yeah,
allows for it.
absolutely, yeah, we could just, absolutely, we could just advertise and do it. So, we'd be able to.
Okay. I'll call Steve when we're done then.
Very good. Okay. Calls all kinds of questions, gonna make me think for a bit, I tell you, I don't know if I like that. Thinking is hard. All right, come to the end of our public session, so now is the time that we open this up for discussion, comment. Anybody care to address the board today?
If I may, Rich Moylan, Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Haven't been here for a while.
Yeah.
Glad to be here. I apparently missed the discussion on flattening markers. And I would hope, particularly in the case of a cemetery like Oakwood in Troy, a historic cemetery that is trying to involve a community, that you would not push them towards doing such a thing. We made that mistake in the 1970s and 1980s to make maintenance easy. Anything that was a little bit wobbly, we flattened it. And it was a terrible mistake. We're not that type of cemetery. So we're trying to go back now and say, we have a lot more stones, but we're trying to go back and set everything up that we made those mistakes on years ago. So I would hope, I mean, it could be case by case, there might be, and I certainly don't want to spend more of people's money unnecessarily, but to preserve the character of that historic cemetery, I would hope you would resist that.
Yeah, we've had these conversations over the years.
Okay.
I'm sure you were there for some of them, you just don't
Maybe.
remember.
And
Yeah,
secondly,
it's the
on
same,
this-
deal. We had the same, we're sensitive to that.
Good.
You know, we talked about that in the context of dangerous monuments a lot, about laying stones down. And there is a little bit more cost-effective kind of analysis of dangerous monuments than there is, but we had the same discussion, well, is it in historic cemetery, historic area of the cemetery? And you've got to be sensitive to that because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You don't want to destroy the character of the cemetery. Effectuating what we do. So, yeah, no, we're sensitive to that.
Secondly, on the cremation issue, sounds to me like SUNY is trying to do the right thing here. I mean, they could just incinerate these bodies and do whatever they want, and I think it should be important to try to keep it in New York. We know the New Jersey crematories have their flaws. They're not inspected as carefully as New York crematories are.
How much did Richard pay you to say that?
But it's true. I mean, I've seen it myself in a particular case. And I mean, the dignity of the human body is important here. I don't know if 300 is the right number. I would dispute that these additional cremations only cost them $30.
That was their number, not ours.
Yeah, I believe that, but that is, I mean, in New York City, the gas alone is double that on a cremation.
Right.
And I think Long Island might be more on gas costs, so, and then the handling of them, and it just seems like the right thing to do. Yeah, if the funeral director can be taken out of the equation, that might be a good thing for the crematory, but keeping cremations in New York is good. And I think the State University should be applauded here too for hopefully trying to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Could you
identify yourself.
Yes, David Koenig from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. Just to follow up on what Mr. Moylan said, since SUNY has these facilities across the state, and I would presume that DOH has some interaction with the cadaver sections of these schools, that perhaps there is a way that we could do some outreach from the division to those groups and inform them of the differences between in the safety of providing the cremations in the state of New York versus New Jersey, the fact that they're not being inspected in New Jersey. I know that the board has expressed a lot of concern over the years about this transportation out of state of bodies. Certainly, this is the case where New York State tax dollars are being spent for a regulated entity by the state of New York is conducting the cremations. Perhaps there should be some outreach and communication about the safety aspects of doing it in New York versus New Jersey.
That's a good suggestion. Let's see what we can do. No, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, at this point in time, what we'll do is, we'll take a 5-minute break, but before that, I will like to go into executive session for investigation of good matters. Second. All in favor, say aye. And,
I wrote it down. Cemetery on.
We're back on.
I spoke to,
All right, you be back on.
Back on. We're
Thank
back
you,
on.
everybody, for a lovely executive session. I will motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.